Welcome to the Bill Walton Show, featuring conversations with leaders, entrepreneurs, artists, and thinkers. Fresh perspectives on money, culture, politics, and human flourishing. Interesting people, interesting things.
Do you remember the show Seinfeld? Yeah, of course you did. Everybody watched Seinfeld. It was fantastic. And the great thing about that show was they promoted it as the show about nothing. And I thought we'd take a riff on that today. And this is a show about everything. And there's so much going on in the world. We have war, we have elections, we have cultural change, and I couldn't think of anybody to talk about this more concisely and more interestingly than Mercedes Schlapp and Matt Schlapp. And together we're sort of ringleaders at CPAC. I guess Matt, now I'm vice chairman of CPAC. And
no, you're first vice chairman. Nice
first.
Try.
Okay.
And I try to keep you guys all, in order. So I feel like my job is the most important.
Well, I'm trying
frankly.
to evade responsibility. I don't want to get back. Anyway, so
She
here
has
we
this
are.
title of senior
fellow.
Senior fellow. What does that mean? Doesn't mean much. So that's dangerous. We probably need to narrow her title.
Narrow it.
I have a title at Discovery Institute, the Senior Fellow in the Institute for Morality, Wealth, and Poverty.
Ooh.
Wow.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Wow.
I have no idea what
What
that
does
means.
that all mean? We were all thinking the same thing.
So CPAC, everybody knows, we're probably the leading advocacy group in America, if not the world. And in fact, we want to talk about that, about what we're doing all over the world. So I don't really know where to start. I mean, we are deeply engaged in the election. Maybe we ought to start with what's happening with the Trump campaign, what's happening with the debate or lack of debates that are coming up. Mercy, you want to take a crack at that?
Well, yeah. First of all, I think all of us are just feeling exhausted, quite frankly. I think that there is this sense of how can the Democrats and Kamala Harris and her campaign, along with the media, just drag us down and make us, really feel like, can we get to the end? And I think this is the moment in time that everyone needs to be very focused, get recharged, and know that what's at stake is so serious. And I hear across the board just people saying, oh my goodness, it's like weeks away from the election. There's so much, they feel the stress. They feel the stress because they know that our country is facing this pivotal point. And, you look at the fact that, okay, we know Joe Biden was bad, Bill, but Kamala Harris takes bad to a whole new level. I mean, the incompetence, the inability to articulate a plan, to understand even a basic economic plan, her inability to connect and relate to the American people. It's so obvious. And yet I'm racking my brain going, how can she even be getting 48% in these polls or 49% in these polls?
Do you believe the polls, Matt? Do you believe
I think the polls are all over.
I'm not sure.
But even if we don't believe the polls, what concerns me is early voting, the organization behind Kamala Harris and the Democrats, and of course, always a big issue of election integrity and what is going to happen in these cities.
Polling?
whatever you want to take it, yeah.
The ballot on polling was just the head-to-head, Harris versus Trump. It's kind of like the centerfold in the old Playboy magazine. Everybody wants to see it.
I just read that. I never looked at it.
Yeah, I know. You read the articles.
Yeah, I read the articles.
But really, the thing about polling that's interesting is trends and behind the ballot. So, I think the ballot question is pretty broken. I think it's easy to poke holes in it. But beyond that, you have a couple of these trends. And the switch from blue collar, from the fancy country club set for the Republican nominee, Donald Trump, is a big shift. Why? What is it? 2/3 of Americans don't go to college. I mean, that was a good shift for us from a demographic standpoint. Then you have the second question, which is, we're the racist party, obviously, even though the Republican Party was established to end slavery, give former slaves their full civil rights. We voted for civil rights legislation in larger percentages than the Jim Crow Democrats. But somehow CNN and the rest of them have us being the racist party. Well, if we are the racist party, why are racial minorities turning towards Donald Trump? Why? Because they fled communism, it didn't work there, and they're seeing the effects of an open border and communism in this country, and they're like, we don't like this. It's not working for us. So that's the trending I see in polling. So it's hard for me to look at those trends and see a loss for Donald Trump.
Well, here's the thing, and I'm seeing, because I'm the economics guy, and I don't see that the Democrats from day one of Biden's administration, Kamala's administration, remember, Biden said just this week that he delegated everything to Kamala, and Kamala did a great job in everything he delegated to her.
And she was the last person in the Oval Office on every big decision, and they never disagreed.
Oh, and the Afghanistan, leaving all that stuff behind, she made that call. They've never been for economic growth. From day one, they've been talking about climate change. They've been talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. They've been talking about all these social issues and their frankly Marxist agenda. And this is the party of Davos. This is the party of you will not own anything and be happy with it. They don't want people driving cars. So what they're doing is not just inflation, but they're shrinking our well-being through consumer choices and things like that. And now they're pirouetting saying, oh, growth, growth, growth. They don't have a single page in their playbook that has to do with growth.
It's about forcing behavioral change in the individual, right?
Yeah.
And how you have to include pronouns when you're talking to another person, or you have to drive an electric vehicle, or you can't use your gas stove. And it's all this regulation after regulation after regulation, all in the name, in this case, of climate change or gender ideology or gender equality. And it really is, I go back to this word exhausting. Like, I think the American people are simply tired. They go to the grocery store, they're not getting their money's worth. It's 20% of the grocery, the prices are up 20%. It's unaffordable living. And what's interesting is to watch Kamala Harris give a speech on the economy where she's literally like running away from Joe Biden. Like, she is the one saying, well, I mean, the cost of living is too high. Well, guess what? You're in charge right now, lady, and so is Joe Biden. Well, we're not sure if
She
he's
has
really in
no
charge.
idea about how
But
to do
she
anything.
has
Did you
no
listen to that
idea.
speech the other
It's
day?
literally like
I
she's
can't
running
listen to it.
against Joe Biden.
So she spoke at the Detroit Economic Club of
No,
Pittsburgh.
the Pittsburgh.
Excuse me, the
The Economic
Economic
Club.
Club of Pittsburgh, and Detroit's a famous one. I didn't know every town had an economic club, but apparently they all have them now, and they're perfect backdrops for Kamala Harris as they try to, give her this kind of like credential of that she knows something about the economy. And the number one word I heard out of that speech was inspirational. She had a speech on the economy, no hard math, no hard facts. It was just, shouldn't we feel great about the fact that we're going to be a great country and turn it around?
Mistake. She thought it was inspirational, or the
No,
reporters?
she kept using the word.
Oh, she thought she was
inspirational.
being
That was the
inspirational.
number
Yeah,
one
yeah.
word in an economic speech, and I thought that kind of tells us everything. She wasn't at a church. She wasn't at a high school. She was talking to businessmen and women in Pittsburgh, a really important city, and her number one word was inspiration.
Well, the good thing about this election is we've moved the battle onto the economic playing field.
Yeah.
And that's great
is
because
great.
they don't know anything about economic growth. Nothing. In fact, they're against it. So now to watch them try to play this game they've never played, I think it's payback time.
I never thought about this before until this moment, but when I was young and Jimmy Carter was president, he was wearing a sweater and carrying his own bag and talking to us about how America had to like downgrade her expectations because we weren't going to be this great country anymore. We had this thing called malaise. It was a kind of a word that he used in politics to say, like, look, we all feel bad about things because things are bad. And then we had this thing called stagflation, right? Which you can explain to me what that is, but that was low economic growth, high inflation, if I remember correct, high interest rates. And his solution to that, if I remember correctly, was basically his version of the Green New Deal. We're going to drive 55. We're going to use a lot less energy. There's nothing we can do to make OPEC and other
Don't
places.
forget the thermostats.
That's right.
Turn them down in the winter.
Yeah.
Below
Wh-
65, I think.
Yeah, maybe he was in the sweater business.
But I mean, my point, and I'll close this loop. But what came first, the chicken or the egg? Were they happy about the stagflation and the malaise because then they could push their energy austerity, or
I think that was a different Democrat.
or was
Party.
that a different? Was that the fact that he was just trying to respond to it? But it's interesting how it's always the same policies, which is it's kind of our fault. We have to change our way of living because we consume too much or we're destroying the planet.
But do you think, this is actually a question I want to hear from Bill on this, but Bill, do you think that the American people, like, are they just accepting it? I mean, what percentage of American
I don't
people
think
are
so.
just going with the flow and saying, you know what, we're going to just accept because we have to save our planet and because, you know, we should respect what Kamala Harris is saying. How many of those people are willing to just go with the flow as opposed to those saying, I'm going to have a resistance, like I'm not doing this?
Well, I can't put a percentage on it, but I think a big percentage of Americans, I think majority, get that they've never been about growth during this term, and they just keep seeing their life getting worse, and they're not hearing her say what she's going to do different from what she's already been doing. So I think the winds that are back on this one.
Yeah.
So you
I
say
really
that,
do.
but I think you should break that down. So like they don't believe in growth and we haven't had growth, but they're getting the downside of inflation. So there's
Totally
growth
getting
in
the
some
downside
things,
of
but it's the wrong growth. There's no economic activity, right?
Well, inflation, you can't eat. No. I mean that's ephemeral. I'm not sure I understand your question. What?
My only point is this, which is sometimes when you have a lot of economic activity, right, they concern that you'll overheat the economy and that you could see some inflation. They have the opposite, which is there's no economic activity happening in this country. The only thing we've actually seen over the course of the last 3.5 years is heightened COVID spending, which they never got rid of, and then these new programs to make us feel better about whether it's COVID, this or that. It's all like federal government fuel, build back better, inflation inject.
Kamala's making the argument that the demon in the demons in the room are the corporations because they're making so much profit and it's not getting down to the little guy. So like that's kind of her angle. And then she's like, that's why we got to boost up the corporate tax to 28%. And then she's saying that with those tax increases, that's how she's going to pay for what? More federal government spending. So this goes back to their solution is always about spending. I mean, Republicans are guilty about spending as well. But the mere fact is it's demonized corporations, which we know that if, in fact, there's higher taxes, that's going to go straight to the consumer. But I don't know. I mean, Bill is the business guru here. So that's
I think
take.
you're right.
Yeah.
I don't think people are buying it. They're just not experiencing in their personal life that things are getting better. They're experiencing it's getting worse. And I don't think you can put enough lipstick on that pig to make it palatable.
Yeah.
So, but then, we know that Democrats live and breathe 24/7, 365 days a year on the mechanics of elections. I mean, the thing that's different between them and us is that they care all about power and making sure they get and hold power. And the way you do that is by making sure all the election laws and all the different ways we conduct these elections tilt in their favor.
Or don't follow them.
Or don't follow them. And I think, I don't want to relitigate 2020, but I do know that I don't trust what's going to happen next. If we have a close election, I fear that we're going to watch what happened last time, that we get a Republican potential winner at 7 at night, and then all of a sudden by 7 in the morning, they've lost.
Well,
let me ask you a question. If Elon Musk, during his amazing entrepreneurial growth spurt with all of these really interesting companies, did he have to follow the laws more carefully back when he was the fair-haired child of the left and EV vehicles? Or does he have to be more careful today now that he's their number one arch enemy? I mean, I think I know what the answer is.
That question answers itself, Matt.
So the same thing is true in elections, right? So like Democrats spend all their time figuring out when they have to follow the law and when they don't, and what they'll get away with, and what the courts will shy away from prosecuting them over. That's the game that they play. Republicans do not play that game because they know they have to follow the laws. They have to be probably well away from even getting close to the line. And so where our circle of operations is so much more narrow, and so we jam tons of money at a very few options, where they have double, triple, quadruple, 10 times the number of options and things they can do.
And lawyers. Their legal team much more
And they never
organized.
get prosecuted.
So how
Yeah.
are you guys feeling about the Trump campaign and the RNC?
I'll jump in here first. I find the Trump campaign to be amazing because Donald Trump is this amazing historical figure. It centers around him. He's a nonstop motion machine. He's a nonstop communicator. He's something we've never seen before in our politics. And I think that's the number one attribute of the campaign, which includes the RNC. The problem when you have that kind of heat at the center of something like that, it does kind of drown out a lot of the other more standard additional activities that a presidential campaign would normally do. The other thing to remember is that the left a long time ago doesn't find salvation politically within a campaign or the DNC. They have a plethora of very well-funded operations on the outside, including on digital and data and technology. And I think we're Lilliputians compared to them in those efforts, and we've got to scale up quickly.
I would say with the RNC and with Michael Whatley there, he understands the legal component of it. I think they've had more legal victories this time around than before. They're more aware of what is happening on the ground. I think, for example, this going after these getting non-citizens, off the voter roll. Let's just start, start there. And we've had some victories in that area. I will say,
but when we lose, it's really the leftist judges.
But you got to also understand there is foreign interference, foreign adversaries interfering in our election as well. I mean, this is part of it. China, through social media, through TikTok, and Iran, Russia, they're going to be engaged in this disinformation campaign as well. And guess who their candidate is? Their candidate is Kamala Harris. They want weakness in the U.S. That is the one thing that they want for sure. And when you have Iran that basically wants to assassinate Donald Trump, let's think about where we are in our society right now, that President Trump has had 2 assassination attempts, and yet it's almost like in the media for a day and then gone.
Two that we know of.
Where are we in this country that we have to understand that our presidential candidate is literally, his life is in danger every single day?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's sort of in the oxygen now. It's in the water we drink. I mean, it's sort of
So it's broader than that. So like they're trying to decapitate this whole effort to highlight the fact that the election of 2020 was incredibly dubious. Everything we're being told from our federal government, we're scrutinizing, from healthcare to food to what they're saying about Iran needing a nuclear weapon, blah, blah, blah. And then we read about the fact that friends of ours who are on the Supreme Court, their lives are now at risk because they know, the bad guys know, that if you took out Donald Trump, who's the replacement? I don't know the answer. I really don't know the answer. If you took out 2, 3, 4 good constitutionalists on the Supreme Court, and the Democrats had a majority in the Senate, they'd fill those slots in 5 minutes. They'd go to all the funerals, they'd weep, but we would never be able to recover from that. So when they say that we're deplorable, and then they say that we're election deniers, and then they say that we're a threat to democracy, this is all intentional propaganda so that when a tragedy like that happens, they can say, yeah, it's too bad they shouldn't have been killed, but they were a threat to democracy. Mm-hmm. They were, destroying the rights of women. I mean, it's a very intentional thing. Now, I'm not accusing, I don't know who's beyond the violence here, but I do think they're triggering people that it's somehow okay to act in a violent way. Now, we do the opposite when we talk. Almost in every time we give a speech, we're like, as angry as we are, you can't allow that to trigger you to do something that would be violent. You never really hear that from them.
can't think of a time where we had, they talk about the right-wing nut jobs. I can't think of a single assassination attempt from somebody on the right for trying to get somebody on the left, at least in our lifetime. I mean, I can't go back to 18. I don't know whether McKinley or somebody like that.
Right.
I don't know what those politics were, but I don't think our side does that.
No, and the problem is it's coming from even the Secretary of Commerce, Biden's Secretary of Commerce, Raimondo.
Gina?
Yes,
Gina Raimondo.
Raimondo, who basically said we need to extinguish Trump for good. I mean, this is the Secretary of Commerce. Like, her deal should be like, how do we increase trade? What do we do to help businesses in the U.S.? No. She is so politically biased and destructive, in my opinion, to use that terminology of extinguish Trump for good. This is a language that
But she is from Rhode Island. It shouldn't even really be a state. It's not tall enough for the ride.
But I mean, Harris's people have used this rhetoric language over and over and over again. They want to demonize Trump. They want to make him like he is a criminal. He has no place in American politics or even in American society, quite frankly. And it's to an extreme. And I just think that that dangerous rhetoric is why you have seen these nut jobs come out and try to kill Donald Trump.
Yeah, I do too. I think their language has been incredibly purposeful. And I just think we should all be very, very much on this problem, which is if they did take out a couple of Supreme Court justices, if they did take out Donald Trump, which I think come on, can't even use the word close. It's a millimeter.
Yeah.
And I really don't think there's an alternative to Donald Trump. Apparent. I mean, somebody would rise up, but I mean, he's a very unique person, and we really need him to fulfill, which I think is his destiny, to continue to disrupt the swamp, to continue to scare the hell out of the deep state.
So everything comes back to this election.
Does.
But the thing, we talk about it here, we're myopically United States, our election, but as we've seen with CPAC, there's a freedom movement worldwide. And Milei of Argentina just gave a tremendous speech at the United Nations yesterday about the quote, pull-out quote here is, "Long live freedom, damn it."
Yeah.
And I don't know whether he did this in Spanish or what.
No, he speaks Spanish. He's not an English speaker.
I know.
So,
he spoke at
He'll
CPAC
say,
last
"Viva la
time.
libertad, carajo." That's how he says it.
What does that mean?
We
You
have
gotta
our
tell-
Cuban here.
Exactly what Bill said.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, I don't think
but talk-
carajo means damn
but
it, but I'll
talk
let
about-
you get away
pretty
with
much.
that.
we can get a little gloomy about this attack on Trump and our people, but we got to remember it's not just for us that we would need to win this election. It's people all over the world. I mean,
Yes.
you see it in people's eyes and what they say. And where have we held conferences? We've been in Mexico.
Well, let's
we've
start with
Okay.
we're going to be in Argentina when? Do you have
In early December.
and the one of Malay's advisors breathlessly was trying to get a hold of us at CPAC the other day because Elon Musk was coming to Argentina.
Right.
And they're friends. And he really wants Elon Musk to get involved in this freedom movement, as you're describing it, associated with CPAC. So that's exciting. We just came back from Mexico City with our second CPAC Mexico, which was great, with Eduardo Verástegui. And we're going to be going to Australia and Japan.
What are you hearing these people say when you go?
So this one woman came up to me in Mexico and said, when the U.S. Gets the sniffles, Latin America gets pneumonia.
Yeah.
Or catches pneumonia. And I thought that was really telling. They are very concerned, very, very, very concerned of a Kamala Harris presidency. They really believe that Donald Trump can help in basically keeping China at bay, which is obviously investing a lot of money in Latin America. And remember, there are backdoor neighbors. Like, we need to, if we're succeeding, they're succeeding. And they're very concerned about really the moral decay and the cultural decay, economic decay of the United States under Kamala Harris. So look, they're nervous, and I can't even tell you how many people came up to us and were like, "We're praying for your country. We really need Donald Trump to win," because they themselves have lost their countries to socialism, to communism. We've seen, obviously, the destruction of Venezuela. You go country by country, Nicaragua, places like Honduras and Guatemala, where the communists are in charge. And then these resistance freedom fighters, they're like, we are losing our freedoms quicker than quick, and this can happen in the U.S.
But here's the thing that I don't think most Americans, because we never pay attention to foreign policy, it's been terrible with Biden and Kamala Harris. The State Department, for example.
Oh, yeah.
They have gay pride flags at every embassy around the world. The whole social agenda, the DEI agenda, is on display there. They're pushing it. The climate agenda is what they're pushing. And if you're in Africa or you're in South America or you're in a developing country, you don't want the climate agenda being foisted on you because you're going to pay the price. I mean, the best way for people to get out of their economic poverty is through economic growth, and that comes from fossil fuels. So we're pushing these things which hurt them.
Yeah.
And yet we turn around and act like the United States is going to be, we're promoting democracy. Well, we're not. We're promoting something very different, and I think that's what people are feeling. I don't think we stand for what we used to stand for in the world.
So, we all read in school about...
That was my speech. And
I liked
love it.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
We all learned about evil colonialism.
Yeah.
Now, we can put that to the side as to whether that was a force for good or bad. I think spreading Christianity and Western culture is a positive thing. That being said, there was this idea that these powers maybe became corrupt with power and exploited local people and such. It's the left that has dictated this kind of mantra in our textbooks. But it's the left when they get political power in America. You know what they do, Bill? They're neo-colonialists. They make all these people put up this flag, and they make all these people abandon their faith and use these pronouns. They make all these people adopt all of these policy positions, and they see absolutely no hypocrisy in those two things existing at the same time. It never was about like respecting the individual culture. It's about destroying the attempt to westernize or Christianize that culture and replacing it with this thing, this morass that they're trying to push in our country and everywhere else.
The president of Hungary is Bolsonaro.
Orban, Viktor Orban.
I get
Orban,
Viktor Orban. He's been demonized 6 ways to Sunday, not just by the United States, but by the EU, Brussels. They have everything aimed at them. What's Brussels trying to force on Hungary? I mean, I can answer.
So it's just like what the Biden and Harris administration are pushing here with the UN, because it's in our country, which we see it pushing here. The EU is run by a Republican Party, a version of the Republican Party, a version of the Tory Party. You know, all of these center-right parties in these countries, they're basically the same. They're feckless. They want to do a little bit less. They
You didn't
want to
mean that
fight.
as a compliment
they
when you
ally
said the
themselves to
Republican
the-
No,
Party.
so the EU is being run by a center-right party. You wouldn't know it with everything they do. But that center-right party would rather align itself, and does, with the socialists and the communists to keep their power than to align themselves with people like Viktor Orban or Giorgia Meloni or Donald Trump.
Italy.
Yeah, she's the prime minister of Italy, who just yesterday, you know, she's getting even, as she builds up her political power, you'll see her voice be stronger. And she said yesterday, no more illegals are coming to Italy, and when they do, they're going to be deported. Like, that was the most aggressive statement she's made on immigration, as she consolidates her power around her. You know, so this is one of the facts that I don't think the American people understand. Those Republicans who get discouraged that the Republican Party seems to give in a lot, they should understand the Republican Party is the best version of that center-right party on the globe. Most of these other countries have worse, weaker, white flag versions of their center-right party. So what they're now doing is creating new parties. The Republican Party should send a thank you note to Donald Trump for running for president within the Republican Party. If he had decided to create his own party, the Republican Party would be no longer.
Let me think about that. I may have liked that alternative.
There's
Well,
one
See,
speaker.
my view of the world, we just did a show on education, is you can't reform these ossified institutions. You really need to just start over with something
Like they do in
fresh.
Las Vegas with the old casinos and hotels. It's like,
And to
Just
watch the
tear
whole
it
thing.
down.
timber. We need some of
We're
that.
doing a new grand.
Yeah.
Well, I do believe that, though. I don't think we're going to reform K-12 education, for example. I think we need to figure out ways that people can create their new ways to educate people. And I think that, you know, the Republican Party may have been one of those institutions that is badly in need of disappearing in favor of the Trump Party.
Well,
Although that sounds like we've gone full dig. It's got to be something besides Trump. He's got
I'm
a name.
about adding numbers to the party. So I
Okay.
think the MAGA movement is critical. I think obviously what we do at CPAC is critical. And then we bring in Republicans based on what issues they care about. But the problem is you got to have a spine. Like, what I don't want is, I don't want these spineless people who just cave in on everything, who they're fine with, you know, let's use puberty blockers on our children. Like, it's totally fine. That's not child abuse, you know, or yeah, it's okay for all these illegals to come in, but there's 300,000 children who are missing, who have crossed the border. That are being trafficked, that are being drugged, that the Biden administration and the Harris administration, they've lost track of. And so, like, my thing is, you got to stand for things, and you got to stand for ending human trafficking and ending sex trafficking and protecting children. This is protecting our own children from this indoctrination of the crazy left. This has been coming for decades. This was penetrating our society for quite some time. And they have, just like you said, taken over these academic institutions, taken over our, you know, TV, Hollywood, social media. And you got to push back and say no. And that's the thing. I wish more Republicans would definitely stand up for how do we best protect our children.
Look, that's the problem, which is everything you described that the left is doing.
Yeah.
We just have to make sure that we're not complicit in it,
Right.
because we refuse to use our power. And the one mistake the Republican Party has made enduringly since Newt Gingrich failed, I guess you'd say, since Newt Gingrich's failure, is we don't want to use the one power we have, which is the power of the purse. We don't want to use it because we feel like it will damage our brand, and that
So
we will.
should we use it?
Can
Are
I
you
put a
saying,
fine
should we
point?
use it or
What
no?
we're talking about is the House of Representatives
Yes.
approves the
And
budget.
and the Senate.
Well, the House is basically
Yeah,
the
they
real
start
driver.
it. Mhm.
Okay, so the House could actually put a lock on the money
Well-
that goes to all this bad
Yes.
stuff.
Yes, or they could pick their battle.
Yeah.
How about you say one thing? So Mercy brings up the fact that a lot of Americans don't know that 300,000 at a minimum, pretty conservative estimate, children have been lost during the Biden-Harris years because of the open border and the gotaways and the mules and everything we've read about with the border. We've never had a spending fight with the Department of Homeland Security over the fact that they've lost 300 kids in our society. You'd have to say, conservatively, a majority of them aren't in beautiful, loving situations. A majority of them are probably in desperate situations in our own country. How did that help that kid? Right? Their public comments are, oh, we're so tolerant and we're so accepting, where they're destroying the lives of hundreds of thousands of kids. We've never had a showdown fight over funding the Department of Homeland Security. We haven't even shut down the government over the open border. To
Let's
me,
talk about
that's a
the
real
open
travesty.
border. Let's circle back to where we started. Open border, 20 million, possibly 30 million illegals, not U.S. citizens. Jim Aggressy and
What was the
Cleta
number you used, Bill?
20, 30 million.
Yeah, that's probably
coming
more than the 12 for sure.
Jim Agresti and Cleta Mitchell were here, and we were talking about it. They think that as many as 2 to 3 million of the non-U.S. citizens are going to vote in this election.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts?
Yeah,
Do you agree? What do we?
we were just on the phone,
Right.
pulling into your driveway on the way here. By the way, we parked in the driveway. Sorry if that breaks any house rules. But Sarah is parked in. But we were just talking to someone. I won't mention her name because when people talk to us, they get in trouble. But
And no sources revealed here.
the only good thing is that this cycle we have a much better handle on who is illegal and on the rules. In
Okay.
some cases, as you said, we've already gone to court. Maybe we've won, maybe we've lost. We have the ability, because of early voting transparency in some of these states, to know immediately, as soon as next week, if some of these people are voting. So it's a perfect moment for the conservative movement in the Republican Party to stop bitching, stop complaining, and do. So we'll actually have facts that demonstrate that illegal people are voting, or we won't. And then what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, that's my question. What do we do? What's our line of action?
Well, the immediate line of action is you have to run to court in these jurisdictions.
Yes.
I agree with Mercy that we're very high on the RNC chairman, Michael Whatley. He's a very competent guy. Why am I high on him? Well, he went to Notre Dame. Okay, so I've got a bias.
Enough said.
You're so
But he's
biased.
also a very smart lawyer, went to law school with Amy Coney Barrett. His whole background in politics is fighting these types of fights. So we have the right general on the field to attack this illegal voting. Now, the question is, will the judges do their job? And what we learned about judges is, and Mike Davis brings this up at Article 3 Project all the time, these judges are completely political 90% of the time.
Yes.
They have to feel comfortable in their country club and in their church and at the kids' school when they do their job. And if they feel like a little queasy in their stomach, and someone snubbed them because they did a tough ruling, you have a lesser likelihood that they'll do the right thing. So I think we have done a very good job, much better job, of making people understand that this illegal voting problem is not a Donald Trump conspiracy theory. It is a real problem in our elections.
Well, and George Soros, they came out with a new project.
Yes, they did.
And the new project is to naturalize immigrants as quickly as possible so that they can vote in these swing states. So, we have to understand that mentality of saying, how can we quickly change the demographics of America, of sending, having, immigrants going from one state, this state or the other state. Look, it's purposeful. It's purposeful, and I think what's sad is when you're using the immigration system to basically cause political upheaval. When we were in Mexico, we saw truly how that country has turned into a uniparty where they have
You're right.
the Morena
Yeah.
party. And I remember I was listening to the radio because we were on this long trip going out of Mexico City. And I'm not kidding you, Bill, every other commercial was about the Morena party and how much they've done for the Mexican people. Then they would have the outgoing president saying how much he's done for you. And you know what they do is they basically pay. I'm not saying this happens here in the US, but they pay for their votes. They pretty much say, here's your money.
That happens in the U.S.
Well, they're paying for your vote. And then what's happened to the conservatives? The conservatives have to run in this Morena party because the traditional parties that they used to have in Mexico have disintegrated. They've lost power. So the Moreno party is basically gaining so much power. And now the president is, of course, looking to, guess what? Reform the judiciary system. That's always the goal, right? Once you get the judges, once you get,
reform. What a word reform
But we've
is.
seen this in
It's
Brazil.
an accordion, right? Can mean anything.
With Lula in charge in Brazil, what did they do? The
Yeah,
ones with
reform.
the superpower are those Supreme Court justices. Same thing with Mexico. You get the justice system, and then you basically are in control of all three branches of government. At that point, it's very hard for what you would say for a conservative group or a center-right group
But go back to what
recover.
Go back to what Bill said earlier in the conversation, which is one of the very special aspects we get to see because of this special CPAC international effort that we're undertaking is there are millions more of us than there are of them.
Yeah.
The only way they win in these countries is by cheating and by using lawfare and by breaking the rules or recreating the rules. It's the only way they win in all these countries. Every coup, every communist coup, this, it's like less than 10%. They have a real plan. They're better at planning than we are. We have the majority of the people here. We have the majority of people overseas. This is, if you like J.R.R. Tolkien, this is the epic battle of the five armies. This is like everyone coming together over the next couple of years. We are either going to win or we are going to lose.
Or we go
If we
underground.
lose in this country, it will be simply because too many of us had too much to lose. And we just played, as you never want to do in tennis, not to lose. If we play not to lose, we're all going to be in boxcars and in jail cells. I believe that the American people are going to stand up to this challenge, but it's a live ball, and we're going to find out over the course of the next couple of years. We don't win this election, and if what we fear happens after this election, the whole world, it's going to be like dominoes. They were right about the domino theory, different from what they thought it was going to be, but they were going to destroy. The domino theory wasn't going to be about a war to destroy America. It was going to be about, carving her out from the middle.
Well, it's the enemy within.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what it was.
It's the enemy within, and it's changing people's ideas. And once you've changed people's ideas,
Get
you
their
win.
kids. Get their kids.
Get their kids.
Yeah.
But let's be real. We've got Chinese nationals in this country that have come in through the border. I mean, we have seen that terrorists have come into this border as well. There is so much unknown right now of what can happen within the United States. And, I don't want to terrify people, but I think people have to be very realistic as to where we are right now in this country. And we are, I believe, setting ourselves up to be in a very weakened position as a nation.
So can I tell you something? We went to this Johnny Cash unveiling, and we saw our good friends from Arkansas. Johnny Cash was from Arkansas. A lot of people don't know that, and that's how I like to say it. And Johnny Cash is very important to our family because his music is amazing.
So you're from Kansas, and you're claiming Johnny
I'm saying
Cash. Okay,
Arkansas,
all right. I just
they
want to
just
point
say
that
it
out.
wrong in their
All
state.
He
right,
wishes
okay.
Johnny Cash was from
Okay,
Kansas.
all
Okay.
right.
I think
I do
everybody,
too.
everybody
Everybody
wants
wants to-
a
You've
little
got
piece
Dwight
of Johnny
Eisenhower,
Cash.
I'm
so
one
let's
from
just-
Indiana.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
anyway, I'm
So
rudely
I'm
interrupted.
trying to think of the great musician from Indiana. Boy, I can't think of one.
Hoagie Carmichael.
Okay, fair enough.
Cole Porter.
Let's go. Cole Porter was from Indiana?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yes.
All the stylish New Yorkers.
Bill Bass.
We're really from Indiana?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, I'm learning. And
John
Mike,
John Mellencamp, although I don't like him or his music.
and
but,
Mike Pence. So, I mean, you got a lot going for you. Indiana. But so we go to this statue unveiling to see our great friends, and they used to live here. And one of them worked for me, at the White House for President Bush. And they said, we walked the mall. I felt like I was in a whole other city. It didn't look the same. It didn't feel the same. And, I'll go ahead and say the racial thing. First of all, they were like the only white people, which was different from when they were here 15 years ago. And they said they didn't care that much about the diversity of races as much as everyone seemed like they didn't live there. Like it was not just like a tourist thing, but like they just said it was like a very strange experience. And I was like, this is what I think the American people need to do. If you're in these big cities, open up your eyes, open up your ears. Things aren't right. You know it's not right. The inner ticking of your being is telling you things aren't right. Start to believe it. Maybe it's intuition. Maybe it's spiritual. I don't know what that is, but things aren't right. And so if things aren't right, you should start to think about what you would do if things get worse. And that's how I think a lot of people in this country are living. People who aren't even that political are saying, I go to the supermarket. It doesn't seem right. Why does everything cost so much? Right? Why did we have periods of time when we had empty shelves? Why does it take so long to order something?
And it's why I think I think a lot of the Black voters, I was down in Miami really talking to so many different Hispanic voters as well. I do think that there is a shift. I think they've had it. I think that they are like, I cannot afford to live in America. I cannot afford to buy a house. I cannot afford my rent. And it's just taken this incredible toll on these communities. And I think that's why there is going to be a shift. The question again will be who can get out the vote and who could take it to
Of course,
the
this is
finish line.
why I think Trump's going to win.
Yeah, well, they got to go out and vote.
Because I think what percentage of young black men does Trump now have? Up from what?
What's funny because
What percentage of Hispanic men
Yeah.
does Trump have? Up
Yeah.
from what? Up
maybe a majority.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're big shifts.
In double digits with black men anyway. But now, of course,
Yeah.
the polls came out this week that showed him tied nationwide in giving 7% of the African American vote. So to me, once again, we go back to the polling.
7%?
Yep, which
That's
is, I think,
all?
is
That's nothing.
about what he
nothing.
got last time.
No, he got 9% last time.
No,
Well,
that's
so it's less. So
super low number.
the point is this, which is that if he's tied nationwide with that number of African Americans supporting him, then it just shows you that the race is it's in a much better place
Right.
than people realize. But can I ask you a question?
Yes.
This is the thing this is the thing I'm struggling with. You look at all these polls, people say Trump could lose. What was the point of, if you believe that an angel or God or the cosmos or whatever people's views are, I believe it's God, intervened to save his life on that field in Pennsylvania. There's no logical way to describe the fact that he got it. We were all together when that happened.
Yeah, we were.
That he got up off the canvas, stood up. We thought he might have been dead. We were sitting at our friend Dr. Miller's house, our board member, and we knew that he got hit because a staff member had called us, and then we thought he might be dead. And I think a lot of us just started to pray, and then we saw videos that he got up, and then we saw the fight. Does anybody believe that God spared his life so he could lose to Kamala Harris and go to prison? Maybe. I can't see it.
We still have a month and a half to go, and let's pray to God.
What do you think the answer to my question
No, I
is?
think it was definitely, I do believe there was a God intervention there. I do think, though, that his life is so in danger that it could be another, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think any of us would be surprised if they try to kill him again.
But does it give you any comfort to know that we're fighting all this evil in every way all over the globe? Doesn't it make you feel good that maybe there's somebody, I believe in God, maybe he actually cares about this battle?
Yeah.
Well,
And maybe he
funny,
wants us
I
to
don't
win
wanna,
it.
I don't want to make light of that, but when he was talking about afterwards, though, he was talking to somebody on the phone. He said, "Yeah, I may have to start believing."
Yes,
I
he did.
know, right?
He did.
I think
He
God
said-
was on my side, the big guy.
He said,
Yeah.
"Wait a second."
Yeah.
He said that to Carl Higbee the other day. It was very sweet. I'll paraphrase him incorrectly, but he said something along the lines of, "I used to think about God, but I think about him a lot more."
A lot
these
more.
days."
I don't. You're looking for an answer. I can't give you the answer to the spiritual.
But it is an interesting
Yeah.
question, which is, there is a spiritual component to the darkness of what they're doing. Think of what they're doing to kids. Teaching kids to hate their gender, teaching kids to hate their parents, teaching kids to hate their country. All this hate.
You can't last.
Yeah. Can't last.
We got to beat it.
But I will tell you, I'm hopeful in the sense that even when I go to church, the churches are packed, and I do think that there is this sense of people turning, to God, saying,
No
"Have
atheists in
mercy on
foxholes.
us," and and they know things are bad, right? And so I do believe with prayer and action that it could end up.
So
well.
what do you think is going to happen in November then?
I it's going to be tough. I'm not as hopeful as you are, but I lived through that 2020 where everything looked so like we were going to win.
Well, you were
And
on
I
the campaign.
saw that. Yeah. And I saw how everything fell apart so quickly. So I want to say I'm cautiously
I have a different
optimistic,
view,
but
which is
you're more like bullish than I am.
my
on it.
knothole on Trump for 16, 20, and 24 is the same. And each time we go through a Trump presidential campaign, everyone's like, I can't believe they're not doing this, or I can't believe they're doing this, or I can't believe he's not saying this. And I just view it as like, it's the same movie. It's a sequel. It's a little bit different, but it's like, it's the same thing, which is he is the center of it. He is amazing. He is strong. He knows what he wants to say. He has lots of advisors, and sometimes he listens, and you were one of his advisors, and sometimes he just does what he wants. He goes with his hunch. It is the same thing. 3 different iterations of it, different people around him, but it's the same dynamic. And some people hate it, and some people love it. It's the roller coaster, right? I always say it's the roller coaster, but there's no tracks. You don't know where it's going. And you know what? I like to look at it and see the thrill of it and the sheer wonder of it. Like, how is this going to end? Where's it going to go? Other people, it just scares the hell out of them. It gives them knots in their tummy. They want to go, up Chuck over in the corner. And that just, it will not change until he leaves this earth. That is how he will roll.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's a good way.
I think we wrapped it up.
Yeah, I think we did. I think it's a good way to end.
We could keep going. We're done.
Yeah.
Do you think Ivanka would disagree with me? I don't think so. I think they know who her father is, and she loves him. His kids love him, and he's wired how he's wired.
We shall see.
By the way, you're not going to change that much, Bill. I'm probably not going to change that much. You're kind of wired, and when you've had as much success as he's had, why change?
That's the billionaire problem.
It is the Bill. I don't have this problem.
When you made it, you see this all the time, and we got to get out of here. Well, just when I've in my world of private equity and dealing with rich people that have made $1 billion, I don't care what it is, all of a sudden assume that they know an awful lot that nobody else knows. And I don't care if you made it in hardware distribution or in software or in real estate, stuff like that. Once you get to that billion number, you're pretty smart. And
Can I add something to that? Presidents who are not even worth close to $1 billion, when you get to be the president, you also feel like you've done something so unique that it puts you in rarefied air. Add those two together. You're a billionaire and you became the president. That's a very unique space.
And we want to elect this guy?
I do. I know you do too.
I do too. For all his manifest complexities, he's on the right side of the important things.
Yeah.
And that's why we got to look at it.
That's right.
Okay, Bill Walton Show, thanks for joining. We've had the amazing Matt and Mercy Schlapp, and hope you found this interesting. This is sort of our weekend conversation, so we just thought we'd bring it here. And they'll be back because we've got an election coming up in 5 weeks. What's that? We're missing
Mercy's cooking. Oh, yes.
We're missing Mercy's Cuban
But we could
cooking.
put some goodies here, Sarah,
Okay,
in the
maybe
middle.
for the next
Some
time,
of the
next show.
Well, Matt and I are in the medium rare hamburger category, and you're in the well done. But
That is
that's
accurate.
Trump's world.
That is
he's-
accurate.
Okay. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, or even if you're not a Trump person, I think you'd find this extremely interesting to learn about how the thinking goes in the Trump world. So there'll be more like this in the future, many of them. So if you liked it, subscribe no matter what platform you're on, and get your friends to subscribe too. So anyway, thanks for joining the Bill Walton Show.